People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
Hey folks, welcome to a very special episode of The Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. On this episode, I am talking with Daniel Kremer. He has been a co-host many times on this show before. I sat down to talk with him all about his documentary, Cruel, Unusual, Necessary, The Passion of Silvio Narizzano. It is a documentary that is part of a release of Blue from 1968 and Fade In from 1973, all from Imprint Films. That is available over at diabolicdvd.com. And while I was talking with Daniel, I found out that he is also writing a new book, which just came out. It is called Adventures in Auteurism, a Crusade for the Critically Neglected. If you know anything about me, you know that I love critically neglected films. This book sounds fantastic. I can't wait to dive into it. I had a great time talking with Daniel. I hope you have a great time listening to it, and I would highly recommend that you pick up Adventures in Auteurism. I think it'll make a great, well, I can't say stocking stuffer because this sucker's 500 pages. It's going to be a great book for you to read, and a wonderful, wonderful gift for the holidays. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the interview. How have you been?
I've been good. I've been busy. I'm finishing this book, which I mentioned I was indexing, which is tedious, and I'm very tired and I'm very sore. I've been in this chair through the last 2 days because it's just, anyway, it's almost done. So I'm happy about that.
What is the book about?
My collected writings on overlooked filmmakers. So the script for this movie that we're doing it on today is in there as like a text essay. So he's in there with 24 other full case studies and then dozens of other guys and girls. It's Paul Cronin's press who's doing it. I'm not sure if you know that press. It's a great new imprint. A lot of great people are publishing through him nowadays. Jonathan Rosenbaum, Joe McBride, Major Moulton, and Nat Sigaloff just did a volume together. I think people are basically flocking to Paul because they've had it up to here with academic presses jerking them around. The process with Paul has been wonderful. It's been very easy, and it's been very quick, actually. There's no board that has to review or approve everything that you do. That's a wonderful thing. I love that about it as well. But yeah, it'll be out like end of October, I think, actually. So it's coming up. We just did copy editing. We just did picture placement, typesetting. It's consumed 2 months. I basically used what I earned, my part of our wedding funds, what people gave us as gifts, and then just like taking the last 2 months off from doing commentary tracks and video essays for discs, and then just putting it into doing this book. So yeah, I haven't been as active, but I'm looking to get back into it after this is all over.
Tell me about this documentary you did about Silvio Narizzano, and I'm so curious, how did you come across him in the first place?
Years ago, when I was first doing the book on Sidney Furie, I always knew that Narizzano was a name out there in the ether. I knew that, I think you hear me in the documentary itself, my recording with Sidney Furie, when he's talking about there was a director at the CBC who had gone over to England to pioneer Granada television. You'll know the name Silvio Narizzano. And I guess I knew at the time because I was, oh yeah, the guy who did Georgy Girl, of course. Sidney really talked him up. And then I got to know Ted Kotcheff, and Ted also talked him up. He was like a bit of a daddy figure in a sense to the Canadians who were coming over to the UK to forge ahead with their careers and helping them get set up, helping them get their foothold. And I was like, oh, he seems like a sweet guy. Of course, I had seen Georgy Girl, but it took probably his most controversial movie, The Sky is Falling, which was released on VHS in the 80s under the dubious title Bloodbath, which I had seen in the VHS version, which you'll see the comparison in the documentary. It is unwatchable. It is so dark you cannot see what's going on. And I was like, I can't imagine what this would look like in a good transfer, but I don't know. It's just like one of those movies that you watch in a bad bootleg, and then it's like you move on, and then it's like you don't think much about it. And then when Vinegar Syndrome came along, and then they did this new, beautiful film scan of it, I was like, wow, what a fucked up, demented movie this is. And really fascinating film, very personal, it feels. And it also feels very gay. Ken Anderson says there's far more male flesh on display than female. And just the way that it carries itself off feels very gay or very queer. And I was like, yeah, that's true. But then, of course, I had seen Blue along the line. I still had my VHS of Blue, which is the pan and scan. This one, it's a scope movie, so you're missing a lot in the VHS. But I got the Paramount DVD. I was like, oh, this is a really also pretty interesting movie, just in terms of the pictorial quality, the visuals. I want to dig a little deeper into him because he seems like an interesting type of guy, maybe just like a subject for further study. Never dreaming at the time that I'd be doing this whole film about him. And then it was around that time that I moved to LA that I caught up with my aforementioned friend, David Del Val, who does a number of commentaries and whatnot. And I was over his place and we were just hanging out. I was like, oh, did you see that crazy Dennis Hopper, Carol Baker movie? And I was like, yes. And we talked about it. And he was also very fascinated by it. And I was like, yeah, isn't he interesting? And I've been less in touch with Sid Fury the last couple of years because of health issues on his part. But every once in a while, I still talk to him and he can do maybe just a few minutes at a time. But I was like, one of those calls, I was like, tell me more about Silvio Narizzano. And it came out in the course of that conversation, it's like, oh no, he was gay. He had a partner before I knew that gay men could have partners. And he was married to a woman for a time, and then that didn't pan out because he was even though I knew then that he was not interested in women, that's what you did. It was kind of like a beard. I began to dig more, and then like I saw Redneck, I was like, geez, this is another crazy one. Written by the guy I learned was his partner, Win Wells, his life partner. So Win Wells writes these two demented movies with very strong gay/queer undertones, and not even undertones. It's just like the subtext became text after a while. And then by the time I finally got to Young Shoulders, which blew me away, which is his last movie, or one of the, unless you count The Body in the Library, Young Shoulders being his last major work, I gotta do something about this guy. I don't know what that's going to look like. I can't imagine ever being able to sell a book on Narizzano. No one would pay me for it, that's for sure. And then there'd be a question about who would print it. I feel like I have to do something about Silvio. And it was around that time that Josh Hibbard at Imprint Films, who likes to ask me every now and then, like what I'd like to see come down the pike on the label, mostly from Paramount. And because they have a nice sweet deal with Paramount, I was like, if you could get Blue, and if you could get the film that was shot on the back of Blue, which is called Fade In, for those of this, there was a movie shot on the set of another fiction movie, shot as a behind-the-scenes movie on the set of this Western that Silvio Narizzano made called Blue, with Burt Reynolds, who's hired by the movie company as a driver and as a gopher. He's a local cowhand in Utah. And he falls in love with the film editor on Blue, played by Barbara Loden, Wanda Barbara Loden, Elia Kazan's wife, Barbara Loden. So I was like, if you can get those two movies in a pack together, I could give you something really good as an extra about the director of Blue. So he began to poke around at Paramount. What do you have? Is Blue available? Because sometimes the elements aren't really in good shape or whatever. There's one title in particular that is not in good shape and it really rankles me. But Blue they had, It was in good shape. Fade in. They also had, it's like, okay, we're green lit, but it's not going to be for a while. So I went to work, and what I originally envisioned as a kind of extended video essay, I was quoting other people that I had right at my fingertips, like David Del Val and like Howard Berger and like Nathaniel Thompson. I was like, why don't I just interview them on camera and do something a little more formal and not just like a video essay with me narrating, but do a documentary hybridized with a kind of video essay, that form, and make this kind of big whoozy what's it's about the kind of the definitive text about Silvio Narizzano for the total lack of one. So my husband went away for 6 months of last year because he worked on the election. He's a statistician and very interested in political methodology and all that. So he was off in the field, and I was left all by my lonesome in Pasadena and not having an easy time of it because you begin to miss your spouse or your partner. But I was like, oh, why don't I just sublimate all this or devote all my energy into doing this thing? So that's what I did while my husband was away movie. Before I knew it, I had a 2.25 hour cut, and it would seem to be playing well enough where I was just like, okay, this is probably going to be the only thing ever done about this guy. So I'm going to leave it at this length. And yeah, that's how it happened.
Which is really remarkable because so much these days when I see extras, they seem to be almost purposefully broken into smaller chunks, almost like, we don't want to pay you for making a documentary. You're just making a short extra.
I'm in that market of making video essays for, I guess, now nearly 20 companies. And the pay is high and low depending on who it is and what the movie is. Oftentimes, if it's a movie that they think is going to sell, you can normally get a better rate. But yeah, it's not a lucrative endeavor to do a documentary about a filmmaker no one's ever heard of, to say the least. Josh was very nice about it and very sweet about it, but that's not why at the end of the day, that's not exactly why you do these things. I felt like I almost had to. It was like kind of like I needed to understand this guy more because it's also, as much as it's about a filmography and a filmmaker and an artist, it's a chronicle of a gay man in this time in the business and how he covertly and sometimes overtly infused his work with things that he was fired off of a movie for making it too gay, fired off of The Man Who Had Power Over Women because the studio didn't like that he was making it like extremely capital H homosexual. And funny, when I was at Ted Kotcheff's memorial over the summer, I got to meet the editor, Tom Noble, who is 90 years old, nearly in knockwood, great shape for a guy that age. It was pretty unbelievable. We met it was a gathering at the Kotcheff house afterwards with food and everything. And I honed in on him like a guided missile because Tom Noble edited Redneck. And I wanted to hear everything about that crazy movie. And he goes, if you think the movie was crazy, wait till you hear about the behind the scenes. It's like, God damn it, I wish I had interviewed you on camera. But he was the editor on The Man Who Had Power Over Women as well. And so he was able to confirm to me that, oh yes, the AVCO did that. There was a big edict passed down. It was like, get rid of this guy. No matter what we tell him, no matter how much we warn or admonish him, he cannot lay off all the gay stuff. He was fired for that reason. I felt like I had to get to the bottom of a guy who felt he could be that bold with that type of thing in that era and living with his partner, a partner who was very, if you might want to say, flamboyant. Tom Noble told me that Win Wells, who was Sylvia's partner, wanted to open a gay bar called Sissies, and this was a long-time ambition of his. And I was like, it was a lot of facts that are now that didn't make it into the film because I didn't know Tom at that time, and there was no means to get in touch with him then. But of course, him showing up at this memorial, I was like, oh, I need to talk to you. But it made its way into the book version, which is a collection of my writings on the overlooked directors. A lot of these little stories and factoids. in the Narizzano chapter make it into this book. But yeah, Tom had a lot of crazy stories and was very fond of Silvio. He really enjoyed the documentary because I shared it with him later on. And yeah, I felt like it was a personal project that I had to explore what this guy was all about, how he felt so compelled to make the movies he made, really out bold and proud about it.
Yeah, I was so shocked to see some of those scenes from Blue, and then Loot looked like an absolute just crazy hoot. I am so excited to now. I think your documentary is doing exactly what you would hope it is, which is now I want to see all of these movies.
No, that's the best that you could hope for. And as I say, you might not like everything that you see, but it is one voice. It's unified. It's one man saying something very consistent through the course with a particular set of vocal cords. But no, he went from the movie he was fired from to Gay on right to Loot, and he put all of that spunk, if you want to call it that, into Loot. And then, as I say, Loot is like the stop at the amusement park before on the road to electroshock therapy. Because Redneck and the following are definitely cold reckonings, I guess you might say.
Again, even with some of the unpleasantness of Redneck, just to see that performance by Telly Savalas just looks amazing.
Yeah, my husband, who saw the movie that came out of his absence when he came back finally from the election season and everything else, he watched it. I wound up dedicating the movie to my husband, Evan, which is, if he's watched till the very end, you'll see. But he was watching it, this movie that is, of course, dedicated to him. And there's the scene that I show from Redneck of Telly Savalas cold-bloodedly killing a child and saying, "You made me do it. Why did you run away?" And like, my husband's like, "Did he just kill a child?" Yeah, sorry, babe.
It's like Maggot from The Dirty Dozen having his own movie.
Yes, exactly. It is like that. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
That's the thing that I've always admired about you, is just the way that you champion some of these underseen films, some of the stuff that we've talked about on the show. It's so nice to give light to this. So I'm super excited about this book project as well.
It's my bag, I guess you might say. That's what I do. I'm not as interested at all in writing the 1,000th book on Kubrick or John Ford or Hitchcock or any of these guys. I really don't know what new there is to say about a guy like that. I'm not saying that there isn't. It's just not my bag, but I'm really interested in digging up buried treasure and making kind of correlations and charting the kind of constellation of a career and looking at people that most everyone has ignored and being like, there's more here that you should look closer at it. Look closer at it. And you'll see, like I was telling, I think it was Ryan Barrell. I was on with Ryan Barrell, and I was like, the word I hate the most is journeyman. Fuck journeyman. I don't want to hear about journeyman. It's like every scene and every shot in a movie, there are choices being made. Some shout louder than others. Narizzano shouted very loud, but there are things to decode at every juncture. And journeyman to me is just too much of a burden. You should be looking closer at these things. You should be looking at what ties this all together, if anything. Sometimes the 20s, I think 26 full case studies, you got guys like Clive Donner in there that Andrew Sarris championed but dropped off the map. You have Joe Micklin Silver, who I've been on your show before, and I got to know Joan and was doing a book on her for a time. And Joan is in there, and Sidney Furie, who's patient zero, as I call him. He's the kind of the locus of my interest in overlooked auteurs. Ted Koch, Silvio. Harvey Hart is another one. Harvey Hart, no one gave a damn about Harvey Hart. As Gibbs, I should say. And maybe hope the book will open up some eyes. But if you look at Fortunate Men's Eyes and The Pix, which I think is one of the great horror oddities of its day, or Mahoney's Last Stand, or Bus Riley's, well, there's a pretty distinctive voice here. Yvonne Passer is in there. It's just, and I hope that that publisher is very happy and very excited about it. He thinks it's like one of the books of the year, because it's just, wow, these are like really very the essays really make clear connections that aren't like too far-fetched. You're responsible, but it's very observant. And I was like, I hope people connect with it. And it's like dozens of others in an appendix with short kind of capsule case studies. Yeah, there are a lot of people in there. Charles B. Pierce is one. Philip Leacock is another great pet cause of mine. Yeah. And there's a lot of guys in there. Muriel Box, Wendy Coy, the great, they were working female feature directors in the UK in the 1950s. And they're both extraordinary. They're clearly extremely talented visually and otherwise. And they've just been by and large ignored. And there are things that connect all of them. And I hope I demonstrate how that is. With Fury years ago, when I began in 2012, I guess that was, I was like, I couldn't fathom, how am I the first guy to ever really study him? As how he'd been this lacuna in the kind of Auteurism studies that I've read so much of. And I was like, I guess more for me then, more stake for me to go down on. I think with Narizzano, it was really like, I think Saris and a lot of these people were maybe slightly put off by the kind of flamingness of Narizzano's gay voice. So I think it was easier just to dismiss it rather than dealing with any of it. I think that's why he was passed over mainly. Chatting with a bigwig film historian, film scholar, film critic, who I will not name, of the older set, said some pretty alarming things to me when I shared the film with him. He did watch it and then was just like basically vaguely homophobic remarks. I was just like, yeah, it's no wonder he's been ignored for so long when the likes of you have been the only ones to have had a go at him and deemed him too much himself for your taste.
It's 2025, people. Let's get a grip here.
As my husband says, they're in his field as well. He's in academia, so it's like sclerotic, superannuated film scholars who see what has already been carved out, what's already been charted. If you are at the least bit heterodox, then, they might as well be the alien replacements from Invasion of the Body Snatchers pointing and screeching, as I point out in the book. Is like, you're not one of us. I want to chart my own path. There are thousands of filmmakers out there and millions of films to concentrate to these like koshered items at the expense of all else. I just think there's too much out there to ignore certain things that have not been given the light.
They're not in the pantheon. What are you talking about? Unless it's Fellini or Antonio. Yeah.
A lot of that. The opening of the book is I do my own Andrew Saris list, the categories as he defined them in the American cinema. And I do my own categories, my own personal pantheon, which I call the personals. So Fury is in there, of course, and everything. And then I go to the solids. Let me find what I think I put it best in the text. I'll quote it accurately. The generally unassailable filmmakers, all are great and they don't need me to cheerlead for them. We know they're great. I would never deny it. So hooray for them. But this volume really isn't about them. I'm not trying to be like, these guys are great and your legends are bullshit. I was like, no, it's just like, these are solid. I'm granting you something. This book isn't about that.
You're not tearing down the old idols. You're just trying to install some new ones in the temple.
I tear down a couple, but that's just as I say in the opening introduction, like this is completely subjective, but as I quote Tim Lucas, who has a quote that I love reusing and repurposing whenever I get the opportunity. It's just like any list of a favorite movie or filmmaker or anything could be like a mixtape that you exchange with other people as if to say, this is who I am. You shouldn't be afraid. There's no guilty pleasure. This is me is in this mixtape. This is who I am. Like there shouldn't be this kind of like Leonard Zelig. This has been sanctioned, so I should include it. This has not been sanctioned, so I should leave it off. Don't be Leonard Zelig. Don't be the human chameleon. Be like, make your own mixtape, hand it off with pride and be like, this is me. This is what I value. This is what I like. And I talk about that in the intro chapter. You might not like the fact that I don't connect with these whatever guys. I'm not going to spoil who they are. You have to get the book to find out. But as like, that's my reality. This is all completely subjective. I talk about what feeds into our subjectivity, what feeds into its experience, its culture. I offer an example of this leaving a screening of The Revenant at one point. My friend and I were trying to glean, why did we not connect with that film at all? And then we had this really interesting conversation that I talk about. It's just like, it's where we both came from, comparing it with other movies that say the same content. A man alone in the wild, fighting back the elements type of thing. Okay, that other movie works. Why does that work? And this one that we just saw does not. And then we had a really great conversation about it. It's partly it's cultural, partly it's experience. It's a lot of things. And like Joe Dante, who wrote the foreword, which I was very grateful for, talks a little about this as well. It's like, where does all this come from? And it's like Jonathan Rosenbaum, you should see films as guides for how to live. And the films that you value should show you some type of path about, what it should demonstrate or give body to the values that you hold dear. And you have Richard Brody saying, film is like a book. It's like every film is like a book of philosophy. Like, what is the author or what is the director or the filmmaker saying? I put it in a Jewish mystical context, which is John Borman says that filmmaking is translating money into light. And the Judaism I came of age in, it's translating Gashmias, which is the material world, into Ruchnius, which is the spiritual world. So we're taking this cold substance of either cellulose acetate or ones and zeros on a drive, and we're turning that into something that is spiritual, something that connects us to dreams and dream states and everything else. And so with that in mind, I said, if filmmakers are clergy people, what do their churches or temples look like? And then it comes this exercise of John Ford. He's the most ritually oriented Catholic priest you ever did meet, but his true self comes out at the church socials where the women leave early and the men sit around in their uniforms, drinking tear-infused beer, memorializing their mothers. And that became a kind of a fun exercise to open with. But it's all very personal. And the point of the book is I value these people. I've plucked them out of this obscure form and I've given them to you, fed them back to you. Now, if you're interested, based on what I've written, seek them out and look for these things. If not, move on and find what appeals to you. It's called Adventures in Auteurism, a crusade for the critically neglected. That's what it is.
When it came to the Narizzano films, you talked about the restoration of The Sky is Falling and, coming out with this new version of Blue and Fade In, on which this documentary lives, which is freaking fantastic, having that as this kind of companion piece to those two films. How difficult or easy was it to find the rest of these films? Because the clips from some of the other films in your documentary look gorgeous, but how easy or difficult is it to find these films?
I'm a gray marketeer, so I'm constantly sourcing these things from sometimes sketchy places, I guess you say. So Die Die My Darling is out there. You can get that pretty handily. Georgy Girl is, of course, out there. Blue is now out there again, and Redneck and The Sky is Falling is out there. So you got a big chunk of the movies that are available. And then you have the films that I call the trilogy of pedagogy, which are Why Shoot the Teacher, which I'm hoping a certain company is working on finding the elements of that. There's been the conversation about that. So hopefully maybe they'll dig that one up, which only had a VHS release in the early to mid 80s from Embassy Home Video. You had The Class of Miss McMichael, once again VHS from CBS Fox, hasn't been out on video since then. And Choices, which has been out on every fucking video label known to man. I'm talking bargain bin label with Demi Moore's mug plastered on the front of it. So that one's gotten around. It is neither one of Narizzano's better films, nor is the transfer on it very good. So that's not a good barometer for whether or not you will groove with Narizzano. And then there's Young Shoulders, which you can watch on YouTube, but which was a play for today, which I'm convinced should have gotten theatrical overseas, much in the way that Mike Leigh and Alan Clark and Ken Loach did. That one is out there. You can watch that on YouTube pretty easily. And then The Body in the Library, I think, is part of a Miss Marple set, which actually, that's a very handsome Agatha Christie adaptation that Nathaniel Thompson wanted to make sure that he got some nice words in for. So I was happy that he was the one guy to be like, no, we have to talk about The Body in the Library. It's absolutely crucial. I was like, okay, great. Yeah. No one's talked about The Body in the Library. Let's do it. But yeah, there are a few titles that haven't really seen the light of day since the days. And I'm hoping that maybe one day I can go back and replace a lot of the faultier clips, mainly Why Shoot the Teacher, which is an almost unsightly VHS transfer. But it's workable for the purposes of a documentary like this, but it's a bit of an eyesore. So if that comes along in a nicer scan, which I'm hoping the Canadian archives, which are fairly well kept, that would be nice to go back and do some clip replacements.
So as I said, the documentary is part of this larger box when it comes to these other films, but is it going to be released separately on its own?
I own the rights to the documentary, so I own the license. I never thought that maybe I'm just down on the film festival scene, perhaps, and I don't think the prospect of showing a 2.25-hour movie at one of their events would really, I don't think they would prick up their ears on that, but I'm going to continue to seek out. There is another potential offer in the workings, so hopefully that bears some fruit, but yeah, I'll make it available on the private torrent sites for people to access. The Church of Narizzano gospel has to be spread somehow. Hopefully it'll get more legs and get out there more.
Daniel, is there a place for people to keep up with you and your work online?
I unfortunately don't have much of a website anymore. Been on my list of things to do, but if you Google me or look me up on IMDb or on Facebook, it's also a good way. I normally friend people if we have enough in common. So yeah, those are the best ways for right now.
Well, thank you so much, sir. This was always great talking with you.
It's been a few years, so it's been nice to return. I think the last time I was on was Over on the Sky, 2019. Yeah.
I know. We need to get back together and talk about some of these movies here, especially, I want to go through your book and pick out some titles and have a little film festival.
It's a big volume. I know. I think we're going to be around like 540 pages, so it's a big volume, yeah. But I would love that.
Well, I can't wait to read it. I've been thinking that I would love to do either maybe both, those weird European Dennis Hopper movies, because he was in what was that one, Crush Proof, I think it was called. Yeah, a lot of like odd ones, and then Terrence Stamp was in a bunch of weird stuff too, like that one Human. Yeah. It's like somebody needs to talk about these things, so why not us?
Exiles of Stamp and Hopper, some pretty odd results. Stamp also did the kind of proto Total Eclipse movie where he played Rimbaud to Jean-Claude Brialy's Verlaine, and that's A Season in Hell, which was an Italian film that he made in his European days or European exile. So yeah, there are a lot of movies in that. Flesh Color is the one that's the lost Hopper movie in Europe, I think, in mainland Europe, but which I don't think anyone has been able to track down. But that's another Hopper oddity. Henry Jaglom was a very close friend of mine and passed on recently, and Henry hated saying passed on. He went on the record multiple times saying, I don't want to pass on. When I die, I want to die. Say that I died. I was like, okay. When Henry died recently, I remember him telling me a story about Hopper I think it was before they went to work on tracks. He went to lunch with Dennis, and Dennis was in a kind of, I'd say, a hopped up state of some kind. And Henry commented or made some remark to Dennis's date, who was also out of it. And it was a pretty innocuous remark. And Dennis, what did you say? And then, I just said blah, blah, blah. And Dennis lunged over the table and tried to choke Henry in the restaurant. Oh, this is Henry. It's on tapes with him somewhere. I taped them telling this story, but I was like, were you ever afraid of Dennis? at any point. Of course I was. It's like, even when you were making tracks, I was like, when he was working, he was on better behavior, but no, he was crazy. He was crazy for a time. There's no doubt about it.
Well, I'll let you get back to indexing. I know there's nothing better to do.
I know. Yeah, I only have a few left, thank God.
Hey there, Georgy Girl, swinging down the street so fancy-free. Nobody you meet could ever see the loneliness there inside you. Hey there, Georgy Girl, why do all the boys just pass you by? Could it be you just don't try, or is it the clothes you wear? You're always window shopping, but never stopping to buy. So shed those dowdy feathers and fly a little bit. Hey there, Georgy Girl, there's another Georgy deep inside. Bring out all the love you hide, and oh, what a change there'd be. The world would see a new Georgy Girl. Georgy Girl, dreaming of the someone you could be. Life is a reality, you can't always run away. Don't be so scared of changing and rearranging yourself. It's time for jumping down from the shelf a little bit. Hey there, Georgy Girl, there's another Georgy deep inside. Bring out all the love you hide, and oh, what a change there'd be. The world would see a new Georgy Girl. Wake up, Georgy.